Ladies and gentlemen, this is William Tincup, and this is the third installment of the William Tincup experience. Each one of these is going to get it's better because I'm starting to kind of get a feel for long form video content. So I can't wait to talk to Jeremy and just kind of get into a bunch of different topics. So we do have kind of an agenda-ish that we'll follow. But why don't we start with introductions? Brother, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your
Yeah.
background?
Well, the background is I've been in recruiting for just a little over 14 and a half years. Started off the first 2 years working for an agency, did the old, the grind,
Oh yeah,
kind of, but got my feet wet, learned the business of recruiting a little bit. And then the last, what would that be then, 12 years have been in the corporate world, mainly in the AEC world for different engineering consulting firms
right.
across the country. So right now I'm with Terracon. It's a consulting firm, mainly does like geotechnical work,
Right.
materials, stuff, facilities and environmental, and been with them since I started in February, and it's been great. Been great.
So let's go back to the staffing thing because I find this with a lot of sourcers, a lot of recruiters that ultimately end up either starting their own staffing firm or getting into corporate is they learn a lot because you're dropped in at the deep end of the pool in staffing.
Mhm.
You know, like usually you're younger in your career and it's just like, okay, here's the bid. Good luck.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
So what
Exactly.
what did you learn from the staffing experience?
It was interesting. I think one of the things I learned now, I worked for, I'll just mention if I can, Aerotech. That's the
Yeah,
company I
yeah.
worked for,
Craig
and
Fisher, also an Aerotech
okay, there you go. Yeah, there's a lot of us
alumnus.
out there.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And it was a different period. I mean, this is circa 2000. Started working for them in 2008 to
Yep,
2009. You
yep,
can imagine the economy at that time
yep.
was, just awful. And so it was a tough learning curve. And I had a kind of she was a rough boss. I look back on it, at the time I hated her. I couldn't stand her and stuff like that. But I look back, I'm like, man, she actually did teach me some things, just speed to market, always having your ducks in a row, always ask the questions, um, and just be well prepared. And even though I look back on it now, 14 years later, or whatever, and think, gosh, that was really something that I learned from. And now I drive that with my managers. Now whoever I'm talking to, I drive the process. Like, this is the way it's going to be.
Right,
No
right,
question about it.
right,
So I think I learned, and again, speed market, being really fast, sending resumes over that aren't, they may not be what you need now, but you might need them in 6 months from now, 3 months from
right.
now. So I think that's probably the big takeaway I learned. And for that, I give my former boss, my first boss, a lot of credit for kind of showing me that.
With the hiring managers in particular, as a staffing person, you have this weird kind of relationship with hiring managers. Not weird, but you have this relationship. Is it different from the corporate perspective? Like what's different between if you were at Aerotech versus now working with a hiring manager?
Yeah, you never worked with one back then. We never
Yeah.
talked to them. It was the account manager that dealt with them. So as recruiters, we were just the gophers, just
Yep.
trying to, find them. And this is, like I said before, really LinkedIn took off. And so, it was all Monster, Career Builder, maybe Indeed. I will say that in my years of working with different ATS systems at the time, I would say that Aerotech probably had the best ATS system. It was only in-house though. It was only
Right.
built for them. It was phenomenal. Yeah, going back to your original question, we never talked to the managers. It was always the
Yeah.
account manager.
See, I think that's and some staffing firms do, especially as you get up to executive search, obviously they do. They work with a committee. What I find that's interesting is you're playing the telephone game on the staffing side. You
Oh
know,
yeah, it was
your
all about we called it G2s.
G2s are
G2s is
do
what we
tell.
called it. Yep, and it was just like it's a military term. Back in the military,
Okay.
look at G2s. It's a thing about gaining intelligence.
Yep.
And so you had to do 50. Was it 50 a day? I can't remember, but I think it might have been 50 a day. Now I think about it, but you had to do 50 calls a day, and that was your quota. It was like it was a really the things you learned there was actually a really good building block because they had it set where it was like a military style. You had to do 50 calls a day. Okay. You had to do 15 references per day. You had to do 3 in-house interviews. So you had a certain set of
Right.
metrics.
Right.
But we're now, as a recruiter, the metrics are time to fill
Right.
or source to time to screen. Those are, we would never thought of that 12, 13 years ago in agency. That wasn't
So,
part of the metrics.
well, first of all, I love that. Thank you for taking us into that. The relationship you have with hiring managers now.
Yeah.
So you said you kind of dictate the process. So so they're not telling you how they want things, et cetera. You're kind of more or less saying this is the way it
Driving it.
works. You're
Right.
driving it. Have you had any folks that react negatively to that?
No, not really. Maybe if I look back, there were some learning curves for them. But having been around for so long, knowing what I know, and they look at my LinkedIn, they look at my resume, they've seen what I can do and stuff, and I
Right.
think they're in their mind like, okay, this guy knows, what it takes to be successful. And I'm saying, and I come across as this is what I want to say, like this is trust me, this is if you follow the process, this will work.
Right.
I've seen a lot, and I worked for
Yeah.
some of the largest companies in the environmental and engineering space, and I've learned from a lot of great individuals in that, and I still learn from these
Right.
people. So I'm like, just trust me, follow the process. I believe in it. This is going to work.
Well, you're probably, as I know you, you're probably always kind of tweaking and calibrating too, because you're learning from sourcers, you're learning from some of your
Yeah.
peers,
Oh,
some third
absolutely.
party people out there, maybe some vendors, maybe even the occasional hiring manager. So
Yep.
you're constantly calibrating that bid. It's not set in stone, so to speak.
Exactly. One of the things I think that any recruiter or anybody in any type of job, the best thing they can do is have that circle of people that can relate to and or lean on in different times. I keep my sourcing and recruiting people separate from my people who have been in this business for a long time in the recruiting world,
Right.
to my HR people, to
Right.
other people in the business, from vice presidents of different companies I've become friends with, to other directors. I still keep in contact with every one of my former directors. I actually
Oh,
have gone to
wow.
their houses, stayed at their houses, been invited to birthday parties, to graduations and stuff. So I built a really very strong relationship with my teams, with my directors. And so I
Hey,
think that's to anybody that they should try to do that.
first of all, I'm going to get back to an intake question, but right now I want to follow up on that particular point. Have you seen, because you work in a very specific industry, have you seen and you've kept up great relationships? I'm assuming not just with your directors, but with candidates and people that you've placed. Have you seen some boomerang? Have you been able to, have you seen someone that you placed at one firm, then 3 years later, you're like, hey, listen, and
Oh
then,
yeah. I
okay.
just got an email the other day from somebody at another
Oh,
firm. Hey, I saw you, went to Terracon. I wanted to send my resume over because I'm looking to, leave. So, oh yeah, I get that all, not all the time, but yeah,
oh, that's
you try to do your best, I think, as a recruiter, to really try to obviously want to build that strong relationship. You never try to ghost anybody. I think you always, even when somebody says no, I'll take like I got it today. Somebody said, hey, thanks for reaching out. I'm not interested, but we'll stay in touch. I'm like, hey, thanks very
right.
much. I appreciate it. You always want to end it with, you don't want to not say anything.
That's right. That's right.
Because that will just keep on building a relationship. And they'll remember that. I promise they will remember that.
Oh yeah, of course they will. I mean, it's part of humanity. And also remember people that are gracious with their time. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're not quite sure if they want to make a job change. And you've got a wonderful opportunity. You talk to them, you kind of and then they bow out of it because it just for some
Right.
reason it doesn't work. But you know what? The next thing you have on the list might be something for them. So you just never know. I tell people a story all the time about sales. Back when I owned a web development agency, I got a sale in the grocery store line. So I was in line, literally buying
Yeah.
grocery for for
Yeah.
my wife and I. And the lady behind me was just kind of, we were joking back and forth on different groceries. And she goes, "What do you do?" I said, "Oh, I have this little small web development agency." And she goes, "My husband, he needs a website." I said, "Oh, okay." She gave me her, or I gave her my card. Her husband calls me the next day. Now, it wasn't a little firm, by the way. This was like Dallas's largest law firm, right? I didn't know that. And so he calls, he goes, "Hey, my wife told me I needed to call you." I'm like, "Okay, do tell." Yeah, she met you at Simon David yesterday, and she said you build websites and we don't have one. I'm like, "Well, okay, let me come over."
Yeah.
Literally came over to his office, huge office, tons of floors, bunch of employees. And I talked him through the whole process. He's like, "Okay, how much does this cost?" Gave him a price. He's like, "Okay, yeah, do it." I'm like,
See? There you
you,
go.
you just never know where your next great candidate or great opportunity is going to come from.
Exactly, exactly. And I think one of the things I try to state sometimes when I'm reaching out to candidates is, hey, look, you might not be looking for a move, but it doesn't hurt to have the conversation
That's right.
because 10 minutes of my time could be, 50 grand to you.
That's
So,
right.
and they're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I will talk to you. So,
Well, and
yeah, you
and
just
and
never
it's
know.
the old, I don't know, it wasn't a trick as much as it was, if not you, maybe somebody, that
Yes,
bit.
of course. Yeah.
Um, if again, that there's some of that that's just, it still plays out. This might not, this opportunity, I'm not going to try and fit a square peg in a round hole. And nobody wins there. But you might know you might know, literally might know your best friend might be that
Oh yeah.
person that could fit into this.
What is that? The 5 degrees of separation.
Yep.
Kind of the Kevin Bacon
Kevin
ever,
Bacon. Yes.
whatever there is.
Oh yeah.
And that's why I feel, I think I might have mentioned to you this earlier, is that if if you grow your network, and whether it be LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever number you have, double that.
Right.
And that's how many people you actually know. And some people may say take that times five, but I think of the double method. So if you have 20,000 followers or 30,000, take that times two, because that's really what 60,000
Wow.
people.
I haven't
Somebody
heard that.
knows somebody
Oh
in
yeah.
that area.
I haven't heard that before. That I like that. And it's also, there's especially if you have a large network, there's also kind of not just pressure, but there's you want to make sure you're doing right by your network. Like I
Mhm.
saw
Yep.
something on Facebook earlier, from a sourcer that I know, and she just thanked her network. I thought it was so gracious because
Oh
she's just
yeah.
like, for everybody that I'm professionally connected with, I've borrowed something from you.
Yep.
I've learned from you, etc. And I just want to say thank you to everyone. There wasn't a list. There wasn't, people weren't tagged, but I think it was a really authentic way of just kind of being reflective and saying, you know what, I didn't get here by myself.
Oh, absolutely.
Thought that was
Absolutely.
really fantastic. I wanted to go back to the intake form.
Yeah.
So how this process works without getting into anything proprietary or anything like that, but just so a job comes available, what's your process?
So we're notified, and we usually get a head start. Hey, we're gonna have this job open up soon. So it's nothing I don't think anybody wouldn't do. Maybe I don't, I don't know, but so you can set up the strategy call. Gosh, I hate when they say the intake call. I learned that a long time ago. So the strategy call, you go over your list of questions, basic questions. Who are competitors? Why is this role needed? What are my selling points? Standard. I
Right,
can't go, but that's
right,
basically what it is. Once there, then you hit the ground. You try, at least of course, everyone runs to LinkedIn. I must admit, I'm probably
yeah,
that
yeah,
person too.
yeah, yeah,
But I've learned to go a lot more in the ATS system, because there is, like, the hidden gems in there. So
yep,
you hit up the usual, the LinkedIn, the ATS, um, having taken numerous sourcing trainings. I obviously do, like Contact Out, Zoom Info, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram. All those various sourcing,
oh
deep
yeah,
sourcing. I've learned from Jer and
yeah,
Mike Santoro, Dean DaCosta, Shally. I learn all these things.
oh
So
yeah,
I have my network of things I do.
oh
Okay,
yeah,
this, and I have a. It's interesting because I have this folder I'm looking at now, and I have the job written on it, and I'm very I like to know my work, what I've done. So this folder here, I'm looking at, it says, the role, senior geologist, and I have the location, the rec number. But each time I do a search, so let's say like Contact Out, I'll write it down and then cross it off. So
right,
I know, and my folder sometimes can be like packed with every search I've ever done for that one.
Right.
And so I just make sure to keep track of it. So I'm not like, gosh, did I source
Yeah.
LinkedIn?
Yeah.
And
Did I
I,
look at Reddit for this?
yeah, did I look at Reddit? Did I look at, so I keep a checklist. I always believe in a good, good way to keep track of things is list,
Oh
whether
yeah.
a grocery list, a, a travel list,
Oh yeah. And you
but
can do them
list.
digital, you can do them analog. It doesn't really matter. It's the same bit. Do you find with certain positions that certain things work better? Like are they your go-to? Like what's the geologist per se?
Uh, probably, probably LinkedIn, but I was just doing some sourcing on Zoom and it came out to be pretty good.
Oh, very
So,
nice.
those two probably are better ones. I don't really find much on like a Contact Out or
Right.
a Rocket Reach.
Right.
We
Right.
have access to a full Indeed
Yep.
account, so I find that to be pretty good.
Yeah.
So that's between that, our ATS and LinkedIn. Those are probably the more go-to type of sources.
So with the strategy meeting, I like how you changed the word, by the way. With the strategy meeting, um, and it's let's say it's a position, a scenario, a different scenario. It's someone that you've never hired for before. So it's a position, maybe a newly created, newly minted position, etc. Um, is that different than kind of a backfill or someone that they've hired, 700 different times?
I mean, the form is still the same.
Got it.
Hey, who was in this position last?
Right.
Who's in the market that that I want to look at, or maybe even reach out to? What are the three key skills for this to be successful? So the form is still basically the same.
Right.
Even if it's a new or old position, I just got to get from them. Hey, who do you know?
Right.
I think a lot of managers sometimes, and I drive this process is like, look, I can't do this on my own. I have 30 recs to work on, maybe 30, whatever, 30, 35. So
Yeah.
you guys got to help me help you.
Yeah.
So let's go through your LinkedIn list. Let's think about, what events you've been to. Have you been to an ACE event recently? Have you grabbed a roster list? Stuff like that. So it's always think of it as a two-way street. I'm not an order taker. I'm not a receptionist. I'm not an admin. I'm, a business partner with you. So
Right.
let's keep it that way. Somebody said once I remember in a presentation, they said, my job as a recruiter is just as important, as your job. And it's how do you say it? It's God, what did he say? I just lost my train of thought.
Oh,
Something like, it was something like to the effect of I deserve the respect, as
yeah.
well.
Yeah. And then again, I think you start the conversation there and you start the interactions there because I think so many recruiters, they don't get that feedback or they send over resumes and they don't get people that then come back and tell them and give them feedback on the resumes they sent. So they don't know,
Yeah.
was that good? Was it bad? Like they don't know how to actually calibrate from there. So what's been your experience in terms of once you've got probably a slate of candidates that you want to push over, how do you do that? And then what do you do to kind of make sure that if not those five, great. Then how do you get better, more refined on your search going forward?
So, usually I'll send over about 6 at a time. So maybe I'll send like 6 LinkedIn or Indeed or ATS resumes to them and say, here's what I found. Let me know what you think. Who do you want me to reach out to? And I always say sometimes, mind you, it depends on like if it came out of the ATS or LinkedIn. Some people obviously don't put a lot of stuff on their LinkedIn, but I always let the hiring managers know, hey, look, if this is even remotely interesting to you, I can reach out to get more information and see if they're interested.
Oh, I like that.
Because it
I like that.
never hurts not to ask.
Right.
I think I saw something in like it was some astronomical number, like 70% of the people are willing to at least listen to an
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
offer, if you
That's
get it out there.
that's the
So
whole joke about active versus passive candidates. We're all candidates. We're all
I know,
active
right?
candidates. There's no such thing. It's like if somebody
Right.
comes to you with an amazing offer, you're going to listen to that offer.
Yep,
So you
exactly.
pass 6 over ish, and then
Hey,
you're essentially saying from that, okay, what do you not like? Let's kill the ones that you just say don't need,
yeah,
that's out. And then so now you can calibrate that. And the ones that you think are even remotely interesting, you can go get more data on.
right. And or reach out to, and I it, I'll try to get a hold of anybody any way I can. So whether it
Right.
be, I don't stop at the old, hey, well, I sent him a LinkedIn message or her
No, no,
LinkedIn message.
no, no,
That doesn't
no,
work for
no.
me. So,
No, there's WhatsApp, there's texting, there's all
oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. You're going to
ton of
use
it.
anything.
So,
What?
so yeah, that's kind of the way we roll. Okay, here's what I'm sending over. Pick which ones you want me to reach out to.
Right.
I'll do it. And then now I know like there's probably some, I know there's the real hardcore people that say, well, you should probably do a little more due diligence than that. These people, like if you send six, you should really send probably the top two. But
Right.
I'm more of a here you go, because I got other
Well,
things I got to do.
well, it's like editing. Some people can think the thought. I worked or went to school with a guy that could think the sentence in his head
Mhm,
and then write it and never edit it.
mhm,
But most of us, we're editors. Like we're constantly editing, and I like their process in the sense of I'm going to get you over six. You're going to tell me what you don't like, the ones that you do like, the ones you want me to reach out. I'm going to get more data, reach out to them, find out a little bit more about them. I'm going to come back, and I can see that being kind of a back and forth kind of editorial process where they're editing, you're editing, and then you finally get to okay,
mhm.
these are the three candidates. They're all within the salary band. They're all willing to make the move. And now let's get into the interviewing process, like
Yep.
the hardcore interviewing process.
Yep.
I like that. Now, what's the speed of that, especially with 35, 30 recs, 40 recs?
Yeah.
How fast are you trying to get them that first six?
Pretty quickly. Now we run a different me. Obviously, it runs. Uh, Depends on the firm you work for and how many recs you have. Now we try to average about 20 here.
Yeah,
So it's not like totally overbearing.
right.
I know some companies have like way more than
Oh
that.
yeah,
But I try to work very quickly. I work as fast as I can, as fluid as I can.
yeah,
I try to work on for me probably 2, 3 recs a day. So I break it up now. Okay, this one's going to be work on for this 2 hours, this 2 hours, and this 2 hours. Break, lunch, bathroom breaks, etc. So you can't do everything at once. And I've let leadership know that, being like, hey, look, I'm one person. I can't work 24/7. I have to sleep. I have to eat.
yeah.
I have to do other things.
Well, and they want you
Um,
to, because then if you burn out, there you don't get to them
yeah,
if you're
right.
burnt out. That doesn't
Exactly.
help anybody.
So I try to set the expectations up front, which is a big thing for me. Like today I got an email, in fact, this role I'm working on, and he's like, just want to follow up and sign it out. It's a dire, it's not a dire need. It's a hot need, but not like, oh my gosh, we need this person like tomorrow. But it is a very big need, but I have other needs that kind of are a little bit ahead of that. And I let him
Right.
know straight up. And I'm like, hey, I'm gonna be very transparent with you. I've done a little bit on it, but I haven't got too much on it. But let's connect next week to talk about it. So one thing I always thought about is being very honest and upfront with your hiring manager. So they may
100%.
catch you on a lie
Oh
or,
yeah.
something
Then they
like
can't
that.
they
Then
can't trust you.
yeah, then it goes downhill from there. So I was like, look, I'm going to be very transparent with you, Mr. So-and-so. I haven't really had much time to do this one.
Well,
So
and
he
and
didn't.
I think that it's also true on the opposite side. They need to feel like they can be extremely honest with you, like
Oh yeah.
really candid with you, like, hey,
Yep.
Jeremy, these six, they're not just off. They're like Mars to Venus off. So we gotta,
Yeah.
like,
Nice to be.
we
That's a
got,
good one.
we gotta really like, we need to spend the 30 minutes and just kind of go back to the strategy and
Yeah.
go, because what you heard and what you wrote down and what you saw and what you went and got is just not going to be anything remotely close to what we need. They
Yep.
need to be able to, it's like a safe place, right? They've got to be
Right.
able to have that safe place to then say, that, or on the positive side. But also you've got to have that safe space with them where
Yep.
you can then say, hey, listen, just like you said, I haven't had time to work on it. And they don't get mad. They're like, okay, 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 okay. That obviously you're working a lot of different recs. Okay. You still feel like you got you got the strategy down? Yes, I do. I'm going to start working on it on Tuesday. Let me get back to you maybe Thursday, Friday.
Yep. Exactly. Set a timeline. Set the expectations. Set the timeline. I think, you know, for me, and I think if anybody's been in their business long enough, you kind of know what they're looking for, because most of these roles I've worked on before in previous lives and stuff. And I
Right,
think
right.
that also takes into account of what you know what to look for. You just know what it is they want in
Right.
a nutshell. It was somebody asked me the other day, how did you learn you're not an engineer, so how did you
Yeah.
take a while to learn it? I'm like, yeah, it's
Difference
you
between
start to
civil and environmental.
structural.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Turns out they're not all the same.
yeah, right, exactly. So yeah, there was a learning, process in it. But as time went on, you know, decade or more, you start to learn.
I
You
think
can
that's
never stop
also,
learning.
I think that's wise for people that stay in one industry, instead of bouncing around. Like they get into healthcare
Mhm.
and then they just stay in healthcare. And then, after a decade or so, you just know it. Like when someone says, this is what I need, you're like, okay,
Yes. Yeah.
I already at least got a straw man of what you need. The question that's coming up right now is about kind of a diverse slate of candidates. How do you, not necessarily how your company is, because that's not the bid. It's like, how do you, especially with what's going on in society, how do you try to figure out what diversity means and how you put those 6 candidates together where it is a little bit more of a diverse slate?
Worsley. Yeah, yeah. Good question. Um, I always used to think that, obviously the best, the most qualified will get the job, you know. Uh,
Right. Should. Yeah.
I've done diverse sourcing, taken some classes in it. I for me, I belong to some, different, well, I used to belong to the Women's Society of Transportation, WTS, but
Right.
I also belong into different groups, young professional groups. Um, just trying to think of anything else. I just try my best. It's all
Yeah.
you can do. Just try your
Yeah.
best. I belong. Actually, I'm a member of the Boston Society of Engineering, DEI group of
Yeah.
civil engineers. So we get together a month. Actually, our call's tomorrow, I think, or is it tomorrow? The next week. But we're having a slate of series of diversity panels. I was on one last year for them, for that organization. So just participating in stuff like that. Um,
Are you
and it's
getting
really
increased pressure from the hiring managers or other people that to be more diverse, or
uh,
is it more
not
about
not
speed and quality?
yeah, not at this time. I think speed and quality.
Yeah, that's what I've gotten from a lot of people too. It's important. It's still
Oh
top of
yeah,
the list, and if you're looking in different places, fishing in different parts of the lake, you're going to find some different candidates, and you're a part of a bunch of different groups, which is fantastic. Again, you know, it's going to come down to competence and who the hiring manager ultimately feels like can do the job the best.
right.
All right, so let me do a couple candidate related things. One is, how do you talk about money?
Oh yeah, right. Well, oh my
It's
gosh.
going to come up somewhere on the list, right?
Yeah,
Maybe,
it's like the usual. It's like the end. It's like the end of the call. Oh, and one
right?
last thing. How
Yeah. What's the meaning of life? Oh, okay,
yeah,
great.
right. That usually for me is kind of at the end. I have a script that I've had forever, and I do say that at the very end of the call.
Right,
So William, it's been a great call, and you're interested in this, but it depends if they applied or if I'm
right,
talking to them.
right, right, right. So if they applied, they already have an idea of what the
Yeah, they always
salary
have,
is.
and I usually try to verify that. So I see
Right,
here in the system that you're looking for this. So I verify. Now, if it's a passive candidate or
right,
whatever we're talking, I'll just say, now, what is your, do you have a certain range you're looking for,
right.
Larry or Sue? What is your range right now? And it can be a wide range.
Yeah,
So
sure.
that kind of gets them to open up a little bit. If not, I'll be like, so what is your? I've done it to the point, hey, what's your bottom line?
Yeah, yeah. So that I don't go below it.
Yeah. Exactly. So we're
Um,
not wasting each other's time. And I can
yeah,
just tell you right out if you're asking for this amount and I know we're asking for this amount or we're going to pay this amount, hey, it's been nice talking to you. And,
yeah.
we'll talk
Next
it over.
position. Again, that's why you keep that relationship, because maybe not for that one, but one down the road might work out.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
um, so
That's
you,
always the challenging one too. It's like, oh, what are you looking for? Especially now, everyone's
oh
looking for
yeah,
that big high dollar.
oh
Like,
yeah.
man, I got in the wrong business, or, or
Well, not only that, or I found the folks that don't give you anything. They're like, you know what? I'm just I want to be paid, fair market value, and then
yeah.
that's
What
like,
does that mean?
Give me something to work with. Like,
Yeah.
are you thinking 80 or 280? Like, what? Just
Right.
somewhere in between. That'd be great.
Exactly.
Do you
Fair.
ever work with comp or compensation on the company side? Do you ever work to make sure that the
Um,
bands are
what a
simulated?
previous companies I have,
Right,
this one, not so much.
right. And
Previously.
so comp. I mean, what I love about talking about comp with people is I've had some recruiters tell me, and that's the first thing they start with, not just active or passive. They just start there with money. It's like, listen, I'm going to get into all the reasons I'm going to sell you. You know, sell me this pen.
This pen.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna sell you. That's my job. I'm gonna sell you this job, but I want to know right off the bat, this job pays 180. Like that's it. Like that's the pay. Now there's all kinds of bonuses and all kinds of other things that are interesting, but that's what it is. Now, do you want to hear about the job? And then they kind of, it's almost like the reverse pyramid, right?
Mhm.
So you're building a story to then get to the bottom and then go to comp. And
Right.
I've had other, gals and guys that have said like, no, I'm gonna start there and then I'm gonna build all that story and then go, okay, are we going forward together?
Yeah. That's an interesting way to see it. Look at it. Never thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I try to save it to the end.
Yeah.
And again, I don't work really too much. Uh, excuse me, or haven't with comp. But in the past I have, and it's always a joy.
Oh yeah. Oh
No,
yeah.
no, we can only offer this much. You're killing me.
Oh yeah.
We got. How about a sign on?
Well, and
Uh,
they're dealing with all kinds of. I mean, that's what's interesting about compensation professionals as it relates to recruiting and offer letters, is they're dealing with all kinds of pay compression and pay equity issues that we don't even know about. We're just mere mortals. We don't know anything about this stuff, and all of a sudden they're looking at, we'll say, the geologist, a mid-level geologist within the organization. There's all these bands of different pay that people have, and so they're dealing with a different headache. That's
yeah,
they don't want our headache. We don't want their headache. But
right.
so
The worst is like when you get something back from them or an HRBP or something like that. Okay, we're going to offer this. You're like, okay, I wonder how fast this will be turned down.
yeah, yeah,
Why are we even bothering offering this? It's an insult.
yeah. Well, and that, I think some of the recruiters that I know that they'll literally, if it's not, we'll use that 180 just as an example. If it's not 180, they're not going to put it in front of the candidate.
Oh
You know,
no, no.
they don't
Yeah, I
want
mean
to.
it's
They don't want to ruin the relationship with the candidate.
right,
The
totally.
email back, the communication back, phone call, etc. is, hey, we couldn't meet your salary requirements. Like internally, we just couldn't get there, and so I don't want to waste your time. So next time I'll make sure that we can do that. And I apologize for everything. Let's keep the door open, etc.
Oh, those are the worst. I don't think I've had a call like that, but the worst is like, when you have to reach out to somebody, we moved on with somebody else. You're like, and save that to the end of the day, 5 o'clock.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and the thing is, as you have been with all the other relationships in your life, you're just going to be honest.
Oh yeah,
There's no
totally.
need. Just like, hey, this is. They know. I mean, candidates. The worst thing you could do with candidates is just not communicate. Just like
Yep,
hiring managers.
yep,
Communicating and let them knowing where you are in the process and what's coming next. And hey, they know it's a competitive environment. You know, they might think they're the odds-on favorite, but they also know that it's a competitive environment. So,
I think
um,
that goes a long way in that whole new dynamics now of candidate experience.
mhm, yep.
Says that speaks volumes.
Well, it's one of the it's I've said this before, but it's one of the best compliments you can get as a recruiter is that you didn't get as a candidate, is you didn't get the job, but you love the process, right? Like that's high form of praise.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Like
And
I had to,
beanie.
right, right. It's like, oh, this person didn't move forward, but they loved everything they went through and they love the process. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Maybe I can
Absolutely.
get them on the next, maybe I can get them on the next rec.
Reel them
Uh,
in.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, offer letters. What's your bid on offer letters? What's your tactically and strategically? How do you get the offer letter signed?
Oh, we don't even do the offer letters. It goes
Oh,
straight
do
to somebody else.
tell. All right.
Yeah. 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 They don't. I don't. I. Don't I have not done an offer letter. I think
Oh, so who else does the hiring manager do the offer letter?
yeah, hiring manager and the HR department.
Oh, that's cool. Oh,
So,
that's really cool. Yeah, because I was wondering how you calibrate what we've talked about, what we've agreed upon, and then making sure that it's formalized in some way that people can like agree, like we both agreed that this is the bit.
yeah, yeah. They usually, so far, it's just been like, I'll run them through the system and do all my due diligence, set them up the interviews. And then, the hiring manager usually takes us from there. And then we'll kind of, all of a sudden I get this, sometimes I'll get an inbox saying, please approve the offer or whatever, I'll look at it, whatever, approve. So
Oh,
it's usually kind of very hands-offish.
I like
Now,
that.
mind you, I haven't done, I've been here 9 months recruiting. And prior to that, I hadn't recruited since 2000 and early 2019.
Yeah.
I was managing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of all different, in a different
I
way.
like it. I like the way they all have the process because it leaves it with the hiring manager to take it over the finish line. And they're the ones that are going to be working with that person.
Yeah.
You did your job to then get them there. You've, talked them through it, etc. The hiring managers accepted it. Now they've carried those conversations forward, done. Like you've done your job, and then they do their job. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Favorite interview question. Do you have kind of a go-to, you're stuck in a place, you probably forgot where you are. What's your favorite,
To
what's your
ask a candidate?
yeah.
Oh man. I try to get out of them. Hey, what are you, what are the top three things that you're really looking for maybe in your next career? What are
Right.
you motivated to do? Are you looking for is the company culture something that really matters to you?
Right.
Is it the work that makes you happy? Um, is it the career path? I try to get something like that out of them. I
Yeah.
would have my list here of my
Yeah.
one,
What's
but I
driving
have,
you?
yeah,
Something's driving you to make a decision.
right,
What's that?
exactly. Especially when they apply. My first question out of the right, well, not first question out of the gate before I say hello and everything, but it's always like, so I see you're working at XYZ company. So why are you looking to leave now?
Yeah.
And then they have to give me the reason they're looking to leave.
Yeah.
You know?
And sometimes some of it's just as simple as I've been here a while and I
Oh
feel
yeah.
like I've learned everything that I could learn here. And I just want a new learning environment. Okay. Now, if you know that, now you can kind of start tailoring some of the other kind of content that you need to put in front of them.
And
So,
build that rapport, which is very important to me at least. Make it, you know, hey, look, I'm not here in a suit and tie, looking,
yeah,
you know, stiff, whatever. I'm relaxed. I make them feel relaxed. As a recruiter, you should be building that bridge from the beginning and making it not seem like you're pushy or you're just interrogating them. You want to, hey, I see you from Las Vegas. Oh man, I've been to Vegas. It's great, or something like
yeah.
that.
Well, what are some of the flip it to the other side? What are some of your favorite questions that candidates ask you?
Uh,
What do you love to hear?
gosh, what do I love to hear? Hey, I guess, tell me a little bit about your firm. So, I'm always trying to beam, hey, look, we are a employee owned firm, first of all, which, a
Oh,
lot of
that's cool.
AEC firms are not.
Right.
We're 100% employee owned. We are, not a giant company like some of those other ones. We're not a small company. So we're kind of that, good size, 5,500 people across the country. Um, I sometimes I actually like when they ask me how I got into my job. So how'd you get into recruiting? That's a good one. So
Yeah.
I try not to bore them with all the details, but I say, hey, I got to admit, I was kind of, I was talking to actually somebody not too long ago. I was like, nobody goes to school for recruiting. There's no
Right.
schools. There's no, you don't,
Right.
do that. So each one of us, if you go to a recruiter, they'll have a story behind it. How you were kind of thrust in or thrown into recruiting, and and so forth. So that's kind of a question I like. Sometimes I ask, how did you get into recruiting? Oh, you must be a good, you must know a lot about. You must know a lot about engineering. Well, kind of. Or did you go to school to be an engineer? That's another good one. When you're out and about, when you say somebody says, who do you work for? I work for a company called Terracon. They're an engineering consulting firm. Oh, really? So you're an engineer? No, not
No.
really. But I play one on
Yeah.
no, but yeah,
No, I can't
So,
spell engineering. So no,
yeah,
please.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't even know the
Is there
difference between a
two
wrench.
E's? It's very confusing.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, you're trying to balance, as I understand what you're saying, you're trying to balance the interview as a two-way street.
Mhm.
Do you cognitively think about, I've asked two questions, let me breathe, let them kind of ask a couple, like
Yeah,
do you play that kind of tennis in your mind when you're doing an interview?
kind of. Yeah, I mean, here's what I'm going to ask. Okay, good. Okay, now here's what I'm going to ask again. Okay, make a joke in between.
Right.
Okay, now write this down. Okay, ha ha ha, make some laugh. You know what I mean? Like make
Yeah.
it, let just fun or whatever. Or try to make it more entertaining than just the old standard. I don't want to feel like a robot to them.
Right.
What was your last job? What were you doing?
Yeah. You could do a conversational bot for that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah, I have that tendency. What am I going to say? And I look at, for me, I've been around, so I've lived in, you know, 6 different states. I've been to almost every state. Probably, well, not every. Probably been to like more than half. But I can always try to build that, with them and be like, oh yeah, I've been there, or I live there, or something. And the good thing is, I guess for me at least, I recruit in the central region of
Right.
for our firm, and that's my bread and butter. So I've lived in Iowa, Kansas, um, been to Missouri a lot, been to Nebraska. I have relatives in Chicago, Illinois, Minnesota. So I know that whole Midwest
Right.
really, really well. So I can speak to them. They're my people. I'm just
That's
in Midwest.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So conversationally, I mean, you and I mean, we could talk forever, but I want to get back. I think it was either LinkedIn or Facebook. I can't remember where, but you've had some interesting jobs before you started recruiting, which I think also makes you a great conversationalist. I think you did some stuff at nightclubs, golf course, things like that. So what tell us a little bit pre-recruiting, because I think it helps you with your conversations.
Yeah.
Some of
This
your
was
early jobs.
the old Jeremy.
Yeah.
Um, so so I can't remember who wrote the article, but it was a really good article they wrote on I believe it was ERE, and it had to do with them working at a hotel
Yep.
and how that, do you remember that article? Who
I
wrote
do.
that?
I do.
So yes, I was like, wow, that was a good one. I was like, damn, I should copy that, but I'm not going to. So I worked at one of the in my college years and then beyond, about 4 or 5 years, worked at one of the highest or the nicest country clubs in Missouri. And all these members were big time, members and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So you had to learn to anticipate their needs. And so you knew so and so was going to play golf at 2. You knew that the range was going to run out of balls 30 minutes after putting them on the range. You knew what time to take the picker out to go pick. So you learned all these things.
Right.
And these people were your social elites.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, hi, Mr. So and so, and know what they wanted to eat, what their drink was and stuff. So yeah, and in reference to that article, that same thing. You had to learn to be on your feet. They ask you how, to jump, you ask how high.
That's right.
So that was one thing.
Before
And
you go to the next thing, that's clearly helped you with both candidates and hiring managers,
oh yeah,
right? That
absolutely.
intuition, understanding kind of, okay, the next, like chess moves, the next 3 or 4 things that you're going to ask of me are these things.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Good.
Participation. Then after that, like you said, yes, I worked in the, the nightclub world for quite some time. I that really got me. I was always kind of an extrovert in some way, but
Right.
that really made an explosion for me because you had to hustle. Working in, I remember it was in Scottsdale, Arizona. If anybody remembers, it was a club called Access Radius. It was the largest club in Scottsdale at the time. But as a promoter, and I guess you could consider it kind of the same thing as a recruiter, you had to bring people in. You had to bring people in the club. And you had these little cards, I remember, and you had to put your little initials in there. Each person that turned in a card, you got like X amount of dollars. So I would just be out there on the streets. I would have to, I learned to, make friends with all the salons, all the, car dealerships, you know, uh, tanning salons,
Oh yeah.
gyms. So you just keep going back week after week, introducing yourself, saying hello to how they're doing, taking a stack of cards, and then making sure they pass them out. And so then, after doing that for about a year, I was really, really good at it. And I remember one of the owners of this little I was working at the club at the same time too. One of the managers, one of the owners of the entertainment company I was working at said, "Hey, you're really good. Would you ever think about working in Vegas?" And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "I can get you hooked up at the Bellagio, get you an interview." And then and I remember like I went to interview, and the interview lasted, not kidding you, like 2 minutes. All the owner said was, the night was called Light, the Light Group at the time. He said, "So tell me your story." And so I gave him like a 2 minute spiel. He's like, "Okay, well, we'll call you." I was like, "Okay." And that was it. Walked right out. I mean, it could have been more, maybe 5 minutes.
Right.
And I didn't hear back for like maybe 2 or 3 months. And I was like, well, I guess that didn't go well. And as I was getting ready to turn around, I had moved from Kansas to Phoenix at the time. I was getting ready to go back to Kansas and just go back to work and some 9 to 5er. And as I was getting ready to leave, the call came and said, "Hey, come work for us." And it was a really good time. I remember those 6 months I did that were just phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
Worked in Vegas, and you had to go, you had to network, you had to go visit all the store owners at the casinos, you had to go visit the shopping over at whatever that mall was. You had to, build your Rolodex on your phone of who to call, who to email to bring in town, and all that stuff. So it was a lot of networking.
Well, what's fascinating about in both nightclub experiences is, you became kind of an expert at networking. And at that time, it was more physical networking, going to a place,
Oh
getting in front
yeah.
of people, doing all that stuff. Yeah, but you've transferred that over to digital networking, in much the same way where you keep relationships with people. And so I think that, again, learning the story about the golf course and also the entertainment industry in particular, those are all transferable skills. Those have all made you a better recruiter. You probably didn't think about it when you first started at Aerotech, but
Yep.
it did. All of that stuff informed you and made you a better recruiter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I might have, mentioned earlier, and I think I mentioned it to you in an email. I think one of the things that's kind of, I'm not sure if it's underrated. I don't think that's the right word to use, but if people always say learn the business, learn the business that you're in, and
Right.
learn what you're, I guess maybe the projects your company's doing and everything like that, which is good. That's definitely something you want to do. But I also think sometimes what people don't do is get out there and join the different organizations. Last night I went to an ASCE event. This Friday I'm going to another ASCE event. I'm doing something for the area water facility or sampling this weekend or whatever. And whether it be you're in IT, in healthcare, or engineering, join those groups, because the more you get out there and network and show your face, the more you I guess get, to me, more respected. They're like, okay, this person is not just a recruiter. They want to know really what's going on in the business world of our people. You know,
I love
so
that.
I
That's
think
great
that
advice.
that's a way to grow your network. It's a way to be more, just in the business within the business, I guess.
Right. Right.
Within, it's one thing to be a part of your business and know what you're doing, but it's also a way to know what's going on in the world of your line of work. It's funny. I always think of a Gordon Gecko quote. I think he said something like, "The most important commodity is information," in Wall Street, which
Oh
is
yeah.
totally true.
Oh yeah.
1000% true.
Oh yeah. It hadn't changed. Hadn't
Mhm.
changed. I wanted to get back to a question I should have asked you around candidates, and especially in the AEC world. What are their expectations these days that are different than maybe pre-COVID? Because I'm thinking hybrid and remote work and things like that. But some people would probably take it into DEI and social justice, et cetera. But like candidates that you're dealing with now, what, especially in the AEC world, what are they looking for outside of
Yeah.
comp,
Yeah,
obviously?
I think you know what, you kind of hit the nail right on the head. I think a lot more you're seeing, I want to work hybrid, or I
Right.
want to work more from home, because our industry, uh, to me at least, I think others in the industry could say the same, is we're a little bit old school. Engineering. I think of engineering. I think of the engineers.
Yep.
Past, they're a little bit old. Companies take a little bit of time to catch up. We're not like a Twitter. We're not like a Facebook or a Netflix maybe, or some other company like that that has the millions and billions of dollars to spend,
Yeah.
Google. So it's I think they're starting to catch on a little bit, but I think that's the biggest thing right now. People in our industry and who I talk to, and of course the money is
Right.
also the people asking for increase, increase in their offers. I think it's the work from home. I think that's the biggest thing, the biggest
Ha-
change.
have you lost candidates because of remote?
Yeah, I think, they're like, no, I'd really want to work from home.
Right.
I mean, I remember talking to somebody, and they on their LinkedIn, it said like they were in like Chicago, I think it was.
Right.
But then when I called them, I was like, they're like, no, I actually work in Boston, but I work on
Right.
projects in Chicago. I'm like, oh, so that makes sense. And she's like, I'd really like to stay, in Boston. And I was like,
Right.
oh, well, that's probably not going to work out. So,
Wow.
um, so yeah, I think that's the biggest thing right now for, at least I would say, for our world, working remotely.
So within the AEC industry itself, take us into that world. What's going on? Like, how is it?
Oh man,
Yeah.
it's
Take us
yeah,
into
it's
it.
busy. Yeah, it's I still keep in contact with a lot of my former coworkers and people who work for me. Are I think with any, you could probably say this with any recruiting sector you're in. It's kind of a small world. Everybody knows each other in my business. I know who recruits for XYZ company and XYZ company, and I still keep friends with them. I meet them when I
Oh
can,
yeah.
when I'm in town, have lunch, coffees, whatever, just to know how they're going, how their company is doing. And I know I talk to everybody, or not everybody, but when I do talk to my friends, they're like, "Can you believe this madness? I mean, we got a person coming out of school maybe a year, and they went like 90 grand,
Oh yeah.
already."
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of the world we're in, though. It's kind of like you have to adapt or die. I tell the hiring managers that I'm like, don't trust me. We're not alone in this, because I'm talking to my peers that work at this company, this company, and this company, and they're saying the exact same thing.
Well, it's going to show up somewhere else too, right? So if the expectation is 90,000, and someone's going to pay them that, so there's
Oh
that,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
there's
yeah,
there's that. Someone's going to say, well, I need the talent, so
yep.
yes, I'm overpaying, I guess, but I need the talent, and then they're going to pass that cost on at one point or another in the process. So I mean, you recoup that cost. But what's really fascinating about salaries that I saw, we've seen it at pretty much at every recession. We've seen this, the people that get hired after a recession deal with kind of a compression issue, where the people that are doing the job currently in that scenario are making 75,000. Someone getting out of college gets $90,000. It's
Yep.
like, wait a minute, there's a problem. And the comp people have to, reconcile
All
all
that.
those. They have to reconcile all of that stuff. But as a business, you either want that talent and you'll write that check, or you're
Yeah.
not going to get that talent.
Yep. I just had a colleague who owns her own firm. Yeah, she recruits an AEC, and I think just that example just happened. I think some firm wrote, gave an offer for an extreme amount of money, like, and the person barely had any experience. But as I've been telling managers and other people in my network, that I think it's gonna, they always say last one in, first one out, and I think
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen is, unfortunately, that whatever that happens with the economy, I think, we don't want to be too
Oh yeah,
on the thing, but I think, it's going to happen. I think, and we'll
markets
see what happens.
adjust. That's what markets do. There's always an adjustment. That's what you learn about Wall Street over the last 100 years. On average, about every 10 years, there's a reconciliation of sorts.
Mhm.
And it's not perfectly at 10 years. Sometimes it happens faster, sometimes it happens, but there's a pendulum where the market overvalues and undervalues and overvalues and undervalues. And with talent, it's much the same. You're in a particular world where you're looking at, and the talent is being overvalued. But at one point, it won't be. The pendulum will swing back the other way.
Yep, absolutely,
What
1000%,
what
thousand
keeps
percent.
what keeps you up at night? What from a recruiting perspective? What's
I was going to say the neighbors.
yeah.
Um, keeps me up at night. I think I'm always, I mean, wanting to know what's happening in the world. So we might have talked about this once again a long time ago. Before I go to bed, I try to read about 4 to 5 different articles in the AEC world to find out what's going on. It's always my nightly routine. So
Oh, cool.
I usually start at like probably 11, 10:30 at night, end
Right.
at like midnight. But I try to get as much information as I can for the next day in case some company bought some company, or
Yep.
XYZ moved to this firm or
Yep.
whatever. So that kind of keeps me up in a way at night. But really, there's nothing that I'm like stressed about. I've learned over the course of the years, hey, you can control what you can control. There's
Right.
nothing that 2 minutes going to be like, oh my gosh, and I guess that's just something you have to learn. I don't think anything really makes me, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be like, be in big trouble or something like that. I guess that's an answer to your question. I mean, besides hopefully my family stays healthy, or I'm not gonna, be sick or something like that.
Right.
Nothing in my work really keeps me up at night.
I like that. That's good. And I especially like, when we talk about learning the business, you're not just saying it. You're actually putting into practice every
Oh, every
night.
night.
Every night you're pulling something up to read something to get more knowledge. Again, I think that helps you with the rapport with your hiring managers and your candidates,
Oh yeah, for sure.
because they might ask you a question like, "Oh, who's this recruiter?" They don't know anything about, and you can say, "Hey, I read an article last night on so and so. Do you
Mhm.
don't know? Do you catch that article?" It's like now you can have a conversation about the industry that they do, that they care about, and that you're a part of.
Mhm. Yep, yep, exactly. That's exactly right. Exactly right.
So let's go into tech stack. What
Ex-
um
Yeah.
what do you? I mean, we talked about LinkedIn and Indeed and things like that, but like, what do you, what are you fascinated by? Maybe you're not using it yet, but you'd like to try some stuff out, and some of your go-tos. Just tell me about your tech stack.
Yeah, sure. Let me just look at my thing real quick here. I love to use things like Instant Data Scraper, Improver.io. Sometimes I'll use a lot of those other sites like usphonebook.com, truepeoplesearch.com. That's them to find information on individuals,
Right.
contact information. Sometimes Rocket Reach, Kendo. It's another one. Don't use that too often though. Sometimes the Seek Outsourcing Assistant, if I can. So those are really the only really things I use. A lot more of the contact finding tools that I use.
Right. Right. Do you find yourself doing more text campaigns, or do you do phone outreach first? Like, what's your go-to?
To reach a candidate.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't do text really.
Okay.
I can't, I mean, very rare I'll do that. So how my approach is, I'll find them, I'll just go with the LinkedIn. So I'll email them LinkedIn. Okay, wait, like I usually set a reminder in that little thing they have reminder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give it about usually 48 hours. If they don't reach back, then I'll find their personal contact information. So let's say a Gmail, Hotmail, whatever, send it through that. Wait another 24 hours. If I don't hear back from that, then it's usually a phone call, finding their cell phone or home phone number. I usually try to personally give it like about 4 tries. I try to stay away from calling them at their desk as
Right.
much as possible.
Right.
But it's LinkedIn, personal email, phone call, work email. I don't mind emailing at work, but I try to stay away from the call. So those are the 4 attempts. And I think that going back to growing your network, it's for if you're going to do it, if you're able to build your network within your discipline. So let me give you an example of this. So Terracon is like 5,000 employees, 5,500 employees. I've connected with probably half, and so now it's much easier because I just did one today. Hey, so and so, I see you're connected to this person on LinkedIn. Do they have that information you can share with me? Oh yeah, here it is. So it's just a much easier. So now I don't have to really use. First thing I do when I look at somebody who I think is interested, could be a candidate. Who are they connected with at Terracon? And then it's an easy way to bypass all of those tools and be like, hey, just give me the number.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. What other? I interrupted you with the text campaign stuff. What other tools? your ATS. Do you have a CRM? Do you
No, we
use
don't have a
anything?
CRM yet. No, no,
Okay.
I haven't used a CRM since I think probably 10 years ago.
Anything
They,
on programmatic advertising or job ads, or do y'all do job?
we do link. I think we do LinkedIn spot. We
Yeah,
do some LinkedIn campaigns, like
those
targeted campaigns,
they're pretty effective. Yeah.
effective. And then we have Indeed sponsored
Yeah.
jobs we can do.
Yeah. Especially in that industry, it's almost like understanding where those people are going to look for jobs. You might have some bespoke job sites, small
Yeah,
job,
personal webs.
right?
Yeah,
Personal,
like ASC websites,
right?
niche websites.
Niche.
Yeah.
Have you had success with those?
Um, they're I don't think too much. They're
Yeah.
just another play. I always tell the managers too. Look, we can post it on like an ASCE Kansas City.
Right.
They have a job board,
Right.
but to be honest, it's just more of it's a post and pray for those.
Right.
You know,
Right. Right. Right.
it doesn't hurt.
Right.
Especially if there's no cost or very little cost, it doesn't hurt.
No, doesn't
You
hurt.
can nice
But
strike.
LinkedIn and Indeed is where you're going to find the folks. The majority of the candidates is
Yeah.
that's where you're going to that's where you're going to find them. What do you do in terms of monitoring, either through articles or otherwise, but monitoring layoffs? So someone in the AEC industry that, for whatever reason, maybe there's been a merger or whatever, but there's some layoffs. What's your approach on that?
Yeah, I know there's tools out there that have that capability.
Of course.
Obviously, I looked at Dean DeCosta's list of tools and stuff. So I know they're out there. I just usually just again go back to my articles and see. I'm interested in who's merging. We
Mm,
have a uh, email that comes out, and I can't remember who sent or where we get it from. I can look it up here, but it's a literally a list of who's bought out who over the course of the week. So it's this article that gets sent to all, me and the other recruiters, and it shows like all the different acquisitions nationwide and then worldwide. And so
right.
then I'm like, oh, they bought them. Okay, this might be a good one to target, or this company just bought this company. So I'm more into that side than the layoff side. The layoffs, again, I'll go through and search Google and through my articles, but that's the most of it.
Well, the mergers, what's fascinating about that is both sides, right? So both sides, there might be some chaos there, and there's some anxiety about the merger or the acquisition, et cetera. And so they might be looking now, this might be a great opportunity for them to kind of like, okay, wait a minute. Let me see what type of opportunities are out there.
Mhm.
I love that. Um, that you mentioned earlier, I think it's pre-show, that is being within the business, being in that within the business. And I think you've explained it already, but I wanted to make sure we got back to it. And some of this is your work that you do with in the associations, the groups, all the way that you do networking, but also the articles that you read and following mergers and things like that. Is there anything else, any other advice that you think that, okay, when we talk about aligning recruiting with the business, what are the things that what are the things that we haven't covered?
Yeah, I think going back to that, the other side of the business, knowing the business, which it means you're in the line you're in. It's always good to know, obviously, the financials and where they're heading in the future, growth wise, revenue wise, et cetera. You definitely want to kind of know those things as well. But I think, again, I think there's two parts. One, learning the business, like your business, and learning about your company, but also the other side, the groups, the organizations, and stuff like that. So to me, that's really that would just exclamation point right there.
Yeah. Do you share information with your peers in terms of what you're learning about the business and things like that?
Share.
Like your
Uh,
other recruiters?
oh yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we try to stay. We try to at least my network. We tell each other what's going on. How are you doing this? How are you doing here? What are you seeing here? So it's just I think it's just good business.
That's savvy. Okay, 2 questions left. One is, if I were to hand you a magic wand, it's a pen. But if I were to hand you a magic wand, what would you change about recruiting within the AESP space?
Change about recruiting in our world.
You could change anything. Change
Huh.
anything. What would you change?
Would geez, recruiting. Oh, well, maybe going back to that original thing we talked about, just being more open in terms of where somebody sits. You know, hopefully that answers that.
Oh yeah,
Again, we're kind of we're civil engineering, structural engineering is a little bit behind the times as far as
right, right,
technology goes and
right.
stuff. We don't have all that glitz and glamour like some of the other firms have. So maybe that would be my answer.
I think you're right, because the remote, this idea of certain positions pre-COVID, this idea, this notion that you had to be in the box to do the job. Well, we obliterated, especially with knowledge work, we obliterated that whole concept. And then there's this return to the box, which is fine. And sometimes that's needed and required for the work. But with millennials and Gen Z in particular, and maybe it's generational agnostic. I've just seen this, this movement of, I want to work the way I want to work.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to some people at Indeed a little while back, and they were talking about remote and remote work are the 2 top phrases in Indeed, searchable terms.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
So it's like, okay, I mean, again, industries, your industry, AEC industry in particular, they'll get there
Yeah.
because they won't be able to get the talent.
Mhm.
So, I mean, at one point, it'll be so hard to get the talent. It's like, okay, we got to change things. Like, what do we got to change? Yeah, work from anywhere. That's all we got to
Yep.
change.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think you're absolutely right. Last question is, and again, magic wand or not, but now knowing what you know, if you were to go back to an 18-year-old Jeremy,
Uh-huh.
what advice would you give yourself?
What advice would I give myself? I would say to myself, 18 advice would be, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Don't, oh gosh, what's the word I want? I see it. I don't, give me a sec. Shoot, got me. I'm trying, maybe I can phrase it a different way. Things, oh, gosh, God, you got me early on this one, man.
So you've told me a couple things. One is I only worry about things that I can control,
yeah, I would say
which
that.
which is one thing. Go ahead.
I think at 18 though, I was very, um, I didn't set priorities.
Right,
I think that'd be a good way. I had my priorities were way out of whack. I
right.
was, there were some difficult times,
Yeah,
every
yeah,
18-year-old
yeah,
or
yeah,
21-year-old person, but
yeah.
I would say maybe be patient. Don't, my first job out of college at 21, I just up like, well, 6 months into it, I just quit because
Yeah,
I didn't want to do it. And,
didn't like it.
and
Yeah,
I liked it, but I wanted to venture into something else,
yeah.
So, and that's when I got into nightclubs, and stuff. So I guess I look back and be like, hey, look, you know, things, things make it rough, but there's always tomorrow, and don't be too impatient on things.
Right.
Don't be hasty in your decision making.
Something I've
So,
learned about you through this call is you're also a process person, and you work a process. And so I guess in that vein, you would then tell yourself, trust the process.
yep.
You'd go
And that
back
and that
and
and
go
that
ahead.
took with that. I gotta admit, that took with age. The old
Oh
saying,
yeah.
"You get
Oh
wiser as
yeah.
you get older."
Oh yeah.
Totally agree with that. 1000% agree with that
100%.
statement.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
and
100%.
being, going back to that 18 question, I would just look back and be like, you're gonna be fine. Don't rush life.
No.
The more I see it, I mean, I'm getting older by the day,
Oh yeah.
and
Turns out.
and it's going to get faster as we get older. Before I know I'm gonna blink, I'll be, 60.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and pick out my old folks home now. Just get it
Yeah,
out of the way.
right,
Just
right,
put a down payment down on it. Just,
right.
you know what? This is where I'm going to be.
Yep,
If I make
yep,
it that long, here's the address.
yep,
Done.
yep, exactly.
Jeremy, this has been fantastic. Thank you
Yeah, man,
so
it's been
much.
great.
With the third installment of the William Tincup experience, you've been amazing. Thank you so
Man,
much.
appreciate you having me on the show here.
Absolutely. And thanks for everyone else that's watching and listening. We appreciate y'all. And that's it. We will